Why would anyone ever trust us again? Where we can make declarations of, Xi cannot give any money to Putin. They can be friends, but if it gives one penny to him for their war efforts, we'll sanction the banks and the companies and Beijing itself. But we give 260 billion to the Ukraine, and that's okay. And F-16 jets, and they're training in the desert in Arizona. I mean, come on. And now, it's like the world looks at us like, yeah, no, because they're hypocrites and they'll take our money too. And now the European Union stealing the interest on 280 billion in Russian assets. The whole West has lost its mind. And so if it weren't for the weaponization, yeah, we might have a chance. But between the mismanagement of the monetary policy, the irresponsibility of the fiscal policy, creating 100,000 in debt every second, a trillion every 100 days, 31,688 years ago, as I always say, is a trillion seconds. Well, that's bad enough. And maybe we could get away from that. But then you add in the weaponization of the dollar and take a snapshot of this country right now, borders, immigration, election, judicial, all of the things people are like, what the hell is going on over there? And I think the world has had it with trusting the West. This is a system based on trust. It used to be based on gold, and the trust has been squandered. We have squandered the good graces of our foreign creditors. And I don't know that there's a way to come back from that.
With the US national debt ballooning to over $35 trillion and unfunded liabilities racing toward a staggering $150 trillion, the global trust in America's financial stability is crumbling. Andy Schectman delves into how this runaway fiscal irresponsibility, combined with increasingly reckless monetary policies and the weaponization of the dollar, is forcing foreign nations to reconsider their reliance on US Treasuries. As faith in the American economy fades, these countries may be on the verge of abandoning the US, setting the stage for an unprecedented global economic shift. The question is, how much longer can the world continue to support an economy that seems determined to implode?
Ask yourself, who wants to own a 10-year treasury that's paying 5 or 6 or 7%? First of all, at that rate, well, that's what so many of the things like the mortgages are based off of. That would create reverberations all the way through the system. But who wants to buy any duration treasury in a currency that continues to weaken and inflate? Because at some point, you have to realize that when you continue to blow up the bubble, you have to continue to throw air into it or it deflates. And then you're right back to where you were, like where we are now with a problem. And so, I mean, look at it this way. Everything they do, they're off. You had Powell, who said that the data suggests that we have nothing about the data suggests we haven't tightened too much. And 2 days later, Silicon Valley Bank fails. And the Fed always claims to be looking at the data, too. That's the crazy thing. In fact, they're one of the key supervisors of the banking system. And so they're looking at it. And yet 2 days after they jack that he says this to Congress about rates going up, Silicon Valley Bank collapses. Last week, Powell told a room full of reporters that economic weakness is not what we're seeing and that the economic data are not signaling a weak economy and chances of a hard landing are low. And then the lower rates. And just like there was no inflation, and then it was transitory, and then it was systemic, just like Bernanke said, the subprime crisis is contained. All of these moves that they make, they don't know what the hell they're doing, and they're always too late. And so, no, I don't. I mean, look, if we didn't have 35 trillion in debt on top of all the unfunded liabilities approaching 150 trillion, yeah, in theory, lower rates would be okay. It would stimulate the economy. But we have so much debt that's one of the reasons that they need to lower it in order to service it. But what does that say to the people who accumulate and hold our debt? Well, they're never going to normalize. They're always going to inflate. They're always going to lie about the inflation statistics. When I started in this industry, they used to publish something called M3, which is the broadest measure of the money supply. They don't do that anymore. They called it an archaic number no one looked at. Really? And so now we really don't even know how much money they're putting in. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics omits things like food, energy, and housing. They take out coffee when it's up 80% and replace it with tea. They take out steak when it goes too high and replace it with ground beef. They keep changing the metrics by which inflation is measured for this reason. They lie about it, and they're not telling us the truth. And the foreign investors would be like, what the hell do we want this for? Because gold, on the other hand, has doubled the performance of the 10-year treasury, doubled it since 2000, over 25 years. In fact, it just crossed over 50 years of beating the 10-year treasury, just barely, but beats it. And so when you talk about gold, not only does it have a much better track record over the last 2.5 decades than 10-year treasury, it has no counterparty liability. You see, that's what I mean by this administration doing so much damage us more than any foe could. Why would anyone ever trust us again? Where we can make declarations of, Xi cannot give any money to Putin. They can be friends, but if it gives one penny to him for their war efforts, we'll sanction the banks and the companies and Beijing itself. But we give 260 billion to the Ukraine, and that's okay. And F-16 jets, and they're training in the desert in Arizona. I mean, come on. And now, it's like the world looks at us like, yeah, no, because they're hypocrites and they'll take our money too. And now the European Union stealing the interest on 280 billion in Russian assets. The whole West has lost its mind. And so if it weren't for the weaponization, yeah, we might have a chance. But between the mismanagement of the monetary policy, the irresponsibility of the fiscal policy, creating 100,000 in debt every second, trillion every 100 days, 31,688 years ago, as I always say, is a trillion seconds. Well, that's bad enough. And maybe we could get away from that. But then you add in the weaponization of the dollar and take a snapshot of this country right now, borders, immigration, election, judicial, all of the things people are like, what the hell is going on over there? And I think the world has had it with trusting the West. This is a system based on trust. It used to be based on gold, and the trust has been squandered. We have squandered the good graces of our foreign creditors. And I don't know that there's a way to come back from that. The best answer I've heard yet is from Judy Shelton, and that is issuing bonds that are redeemable in gold. Now you don't have to trust anything. You have the ability to redeem it in gold. You still have to trust the U.S. government, but people should ask themselves, have we been very trustworthy to the rest of the world? And I don't know how you want to, justify it or which lens you look through, but, have we really been very honest? And I would say the answer has been no, we haven't. And have we been impartial, or are we very partial? Are we hypocritical? And I think the answer for most people in this world, certainly a larger percentage of human population, would say, hell no, and I don't want to buy that from them. And ask yourself one last question. And that is, from a historical perspective, is it not odd that people not only accept currency issued by a broke country, completely insolvent? I mean, we're almost at 130% debt to GDP, and there's never been a country that's crossed that line that's come back without hyperinflating or outright defaulting. But they accept that currency as an asset from a broke country. And even more strange, they accept our debt, which is massive compared to, normal. We used to say anything over 100% debt to GDP is a banana republic. So they're taking our debt from what appears to be a banana republic, not only by the definition, but look at the country. You used to say countries that have election interference are banana republic. Whether you think the elections were rigged or not, half of the country does. Half of the world does. And so when you talk about, are we a banana republic? Maybe in the eyes of everyone else. So why the hell would they want to hold our treasuries, regardless of what rates were? When we lie about inflation, we will never normalize the balance sheet. We got everything messed up here. We're divided. We weaponize the dollar. I mean, I could keep going on and on. So, and when you look at gold, that's doubled its performance with no counterparty risk. Yeah, I think we've kind of maybe missed that exit. And the next exit's not for a long while. And I don't know what that exit looks like. So I get your point, but I don't think it happens.
With BRICS nations rapidly unloading US treasuries, China's holdings alone plummeting from nearly $3 trillion to just $700 billion, the global financial landscape is undergoing a seismic shift. Andy Schectman exposes how these countries are not just stepping away from US investments, but are also laying the groundwork for a new gold-backed settlement currency, a move that could reshape global trade. As 59 additional countries line up to join BRICS, this alliance will represent 75% of the world's population and 50% of global GDP, creating a formidable economic bloc that the West can no longer ignore. What does this mean for the future of the US economy, and how close are we to a tipping point?
Well, I'd first start by slowly selling treasuries and reinvesting them in commodities. Isn't that what's happening right now when you look at the BRICS countries? They're shedding treasuries at a massive rate. China at one point had close to 3 trillion, and now they're down to 700 billion. They're slowly exiting the treasuries. They're slowly exiting the US based investments in that respect. And you're seeing a group of countries in the BRICS that are 59 countries more have formally applied. There's 10 there already. I mean, and now they're discussing, as we talked about before, the new unit gold-backed settlement currency, which is not a common currency for the BRICS. It's a common settlement currency where every country maintains their own autonomy, their own CBDC. You would do it once you had critical mass. Once you had enough countries to, I mean, as it is, just the countries in the BRICS right now have a more human population, GDP. They have two of the three largest nuclear arsenals and a much larger military presence on top of they produce and accumulate and refine almost all of the world's commodities. So you add 59 more countries onto this, and now you're talking 8 out of 10 people, a human population. You throw in the Belt Road Initiative and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Why do you think Iran has, or China and Russia have said they're going to back Iran in whatever happens, and they have the right to defend their own sovereignty, et cetera, et cetera? Well, Iran is part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It's the largest regional military organization on the planet, military and financial. They're in the BRICS. They have chosen sides. And so when you talk about massive amounts of human population, add another 59 countries or more, and add the Belt Road, the largest infrastructure project in human history that's already 75% of human population, 50% of global GDP. The US isn't on it, nor any of the Western countries. So you put all of these entities together in terms of commodities, military, population, GDP, everything. And I would say it represents a very formidable foe. And that's when you do it. You don't do it until you don't pick a fight with the biggest bully in the schoolyard until you got the whole sixth grade standing behind you, so to speak.